It is my pleasure to welcome you to the first All-Africa PR and Strategic Communication Summit holding in the wonderful city of Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. We're very excited to be here, especially at this time when the African Union is celebrating. We have very distinguished gentlemen here. But before I go on, representing the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is the Nigerian ambassador to Ethiopia, Ambassador Lulu. I'd like to invite him to please join the top table. Yes. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I welcome the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Erastus J.O. Mwencha. Also, here with us today is our chief host outside the African Union, His Excellency Haile Mariam Desalegn, Prime Minister, Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, and the chairperson of the African Union, is here ably represented by the Honorable Minister of Information, His Excellency Bereket Simon. Our keynote speaker, a man we're immensely proud of. He is the only public relations practitioner that heads a government in the whole of Africa. His Excellency, Mr. John Dramani Mahama, FIPR, a fellow of the Institute of Public Relations, Ghana, and the President of the Federal Republic of the Republic of Ghana. And he's ably represented this morning by his Honorable Minister of Information, Honorable Mahama Ayariga, Member of Parliament. I will also progress with other introductions. Our chief host, the President of the African Public Relations Association and Chairman of Council, Mr. Peter Mutie of Kenya. Seated next to Mr. Peter Mutie is our Vice President, Christina Chima from Zimbabwe. We have with us, all the way from Mumbai, India, just for this event, the Senior Vice President at Factors PR India, Nijay Nair. I understand that we do have here the permanent representative to the AU and NECA from the Republic of Ghana. His Excellency Albert Yankee is also here with us. I know that we have Her Excellency, the Ambassador from Botswana is here with us also. And also His Excellency, the Ambassador from Sudan is also here with us this morning. We have from South Africa, represented here, Robin de Villiers. Robin is here. Aisha is from Mauritius, all the way from here. Do we have any delegation from Nigeria? Ghana, Republic of Ghana. The wonderful country of the Gambia. The Gambia, are they represented? Is Zimbabwe here in this hall? Anybody from Zimbabwe? Our host, Ethiopia, are you in the hall? Kenya, are you here? Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, at this point in time, I'd like to invite the President of the African Public Relations Association and the Chairman of Council, Mr. Peter Mutie, to give us his welcome.
Since the formation of APRA, we've never held a PR and communication summit. We have always been hosting Public Relations Summit. So this is the first, and it is historic. The theme of the conference, the Rising Africa, the imperative of communication, is both timely and relevant to our dear continent. Today, Africa is the only frontier in the globe where opportunities for direct investment are open. Indeed, it is in this continent where we are getting naturally occurring resources discovered. The oil deposits recently found in Uganda and Kenya, the natural gas that is seated in Tanzania, among other hosts of natural occurring resources, are being discovered today in this continent. So once more, welcome to the conference. God bless Africa Union Commission. God bless APRA.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, I present to you Ambassador Lulu, the Nigerian ambassador to Ethiopia, as he gives us a few remarks.
We can change the narrative on Africa. It is a narrative that others have told in their own words, in their own light. But now we have an opportunity to change all of that. If Africa is rising, let Africa rise and tell that story. It is not, when you rise, it doesn't mean you don't falter.
And now it's my pleasure to call on His Excellency, Mr. Erastus J.O. Mwencha, Deputy Chair, African Union Commission, to deliver his welcome address. Can we receive him, please?
The stereotype image of Africa is our greatest undoing. The stereotype image of Africa, we all know. If you open any media outside Africa, and unfortunately, even from Africa, they all seem to be repeating the same old story. They will be talking about some little war somewhere. They'll be talking about the bad instances of the continent. To the extent that out there, people think that Africa is still dark. And I don't know who came with this phraseology as a dark continent. And I like what Ambassador Lolo said this morning, that Africa's narrative has been told by others. And we are not making enough efforts as we arise to keep on telling that good story, like what the president of our association was telling us this morning. In many conferences that you go today, you will hear people talking about what the economists may have written 10 years ago, where they dismissed Africa and said it is a dead story. And only to write this year or early last year, where they said, watch out, the lions are on the hunt. And that's how you started ending up with these figures that are now being quoted about the 10, 5, or 7 fastest growing economies in the world coming from Africa. Did we have to leave it to the economists to have to tell this story? And so the questions I'd like us to ask ourselves during the next 2 days, 3 days, is why is this the scenario? I want to offer my suggestions. The first suggestion I want to offer is because for too long, and right from the beginning, even Africa's development plans were not being developed and implemented by Africa.
It is my privilege to introduce to you our keynote speaker for today. And he's in the person of His Excellency Mr. John Dramani Mahama, the President of the Republic of Ghana. He is ably represented by our Honorable Minister of Information and Media Relations, Mr. Mahama Ayariga, MP for Boku Central.
Described variously in very unflattering terms, such as the dark continent, the heart of darkness, a scar on the conscience of the world, a hopeless basket case, and etc. Africa has been the object of scorn and derision at one level and the butt of cruel jokes at another, and also the object of pity and condescension at yet another level in international discourse for several years. From the time of its so-called discovery by Portuguese sailors in the 15th century, the continent of Africa has been synonymous with war, famine, dictatorships, disease, and death. Apart from rapacious colonizers and exploiters who have always maintained an inordinate interest in Africa, she has always also held great fascination for botanists, zoologists, archaeologists, paleontologists, and etc., who have invariably demonstrated great interest in our past, but little or no interest in our present or future. Let me state that this summit could not have taken place at a more opportune time. Today, communication is providing us with the best opportunities to close the gap between us and more developed societies in our global village. Permit me to commend the organizers for creating this platform for all the sons and daughters of Africa to assemble and strategize to free the intellectual and entrepreneurial spirit of Africa. Communication holds the secret for our commercial and industrial emancipation. If we can rise to the challenge of communication, no obstacle placed in the way of our accelerated economic development will succeed.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this morning, His Excellency the Prime Minister is ably represented by the Minister of Communication Affairs, His Excellency Honorable Bereket Simon.
We in Ethiopia understand the importance of an all-African public relations strategy in this age of global communications, where positive image is vital, particularly to a continent that has suffered too much from negative publicity. I need not remind you the damaging impact that negative publicity has had in compounding the internal challenges that we Africans face. None more so than my own country, Ethiopia, which up until recent times remained passive while others told its stories in the most negative light possible. Nowadays, one hears less and less of war and famine whenever Ethiopia is mentioned in the global media, but more and more of the progress it's making in its war against poverty and deprivation through a democratic development path of its own choosing. Today, Ethiopia is in a process of rapid development and transformation geared to improving the lives of the underprivileged rural population and the urban poor. According to international report, it has become among the top fastest growing countries in the world, of course, without oil. Naturally, Ethiopia's undeniable positive turnaround did not come out of the blue, but out of an enabling environment of governance anchored in a constitutional rule of law where all basic democratic rights, including freedom of expression, is enshrined. If Africa is to recover from the damage it sustained for years and years, it's in this vein that I believe the establishment of the APRA, the All African Public Relations Association, and the deliberation on this summit to strategize the communications imperative is a positive and a much-needed development if Africa is to speak in its own voice, I think.
All right, we then go into an interactive session. We're not just talking about Africa from our own perspective, but from the perspective of people outside the continent itself. It's my pleasure to welcome the Senior Vice President of AddFactor PR. So to give us his own perspective, it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Nijay Nair.
And I want to start by mentioning from an Indian perspective, it's amazing how similar our countries actually are, or the continent of Africa with India actually is. So I think recognition of the need for Africa to come in and make itself accessible to the small and medium-sized businesses of India is a very big need for us to engage on making the 63 billion going up to 150 billion, and forcing investments and tourism from this country of India. In that capacity, as AddFactor's PR and as partners to APRA and all the rest of Africa, where we've received an extremely warm and hospitable welcome, we solemn that we will partner in every way possible to ensure that we can activate you with the major companies and industry bodies in India to make the beauty of Africa known to a larger audience in India. And in that perspective, I'll keep it short and say today's session is called Africa Rising. Hopefully in 5 years from now,